Good morning, everyone. Welcome once again. My name is Khululiwe Keswa, and I am the president of the South African Black Women in Law. And I wish to welcome you to our very first event for 2023. Today is a very, very exciting and informative event, like many others that we have held. And we hope that you can stay with us for the whole duration of the event. And yeah, I hope you learned something today. If you have any questions, you can pop the questions in the chat room. Someone will be there to look at your questions and we can post them to our panelists today. So just to kickstart things off, I would like to welcome our speakers. First off, we are going to start with Ms. Hlengiwe, Patience Mkasibe. She is a powerhouse, ladies and gentlemen. She is a powerhouse. She is the acting senior magistrate at the Family Court in Durban. She is also a facilitator, a training facilitator for the South African Judicial Educational Institute, and many other things that she does. She is one woman of wonder. We would like to welcome you, Ms. Mkasibe. May you please show a round of applause in the audience. Thank you. Next up, we have Miss SABWiL Njoko. She is the former attorney. She is a pupil advocate with the Johannesburg Society of Advocates. My apologies. We wish to welcome you, Miss Siweliwe. My tongue twisted to Siwe. We wish to welcome you today. Can you please give her a round of applause? Last but not least, we do have a surprise guest, by the way. Hopefully all my speakers are here. Last but not least is our very own Sibusiso Nhlapo. He's an alumni, a baby of this house. He has been working so hard, participating in every event. He is dedicated to growing the fraternity, the legal fraternity. He is also dedicated to ensuring that Black women fill up the space. He can be found in all platforms, on LinkedIn, on WhatsApp. If you do have his number, you can call on him for any advice. He'll always be there to listen to you. He's our very own Sibusiso Nhlapo and an admitted attorney of the High Court. Please welcome Mr. Nhlapo. A round of applause, please. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate your presence today. To all our speakers, you are welcome. And we hope to everyone that is here that you will enjoy what our speakers have to share with us. I will now, myself being the president, I will now do the welcoming address. First of all, I just wish to thank everyone that took their time on a Saturday morning with load shedding and the craziness that's going on in South Africa right now to have taken your time and attended this event. I wish to thank you for taking your own growth seriously and taking a step to know more about legal ethics and the legal fraternity as a whole. I wish to welcome you all, and I hope that this event and many other events that we host, or any other events that other organizations host, you may take time as well to bring yourself to speed with what is happening in the legal fraternity. Never ever stop learning. There is always an opportunity to learn, and if you can be given an opportunity like this one, take it. I wish to welcome you all, and thank you so much for taking your time to come in here and join us for this informative session by the most powerful guests that we have thus far. So I wish to ask our speakers to introduce themselves as they step up on the panel. First, I'd like to ask Ms. Siweziwe to please come forward and introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is well today. My name is SABWiL Njogo. I am a former admitted attorney. I was admitted around November 2011. So I have a few years as a practicing attorney. I have also worked as an acting magistrate in the Durban Magistrate Court, and I have also worked around corporate. So I've worked with some SOEs, and I'm now a pupil advocate in the Johannesburg Society of Advocates. I'm very honored to be invited today to share the things that I know, and I'm hoping that it will be an open conversation because legal ethics are something of the norm and things that we all have either heard of or that we've read about, and we see things happening in South Africa around ethics. So I'm excited to hear everyone else's view. I'm guessing this is not just us speaking to you, but also to just share what everyone else knows about around the issues of ethics. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to start the conversation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Njogo. I would like now to call upon Ms. Mkhasibe to please introduce herself.
Good day, good morning, everyone. Hoping, first of all, may I confirm whether I'm audible and visible? I've tried a beautiful background from the selection that was available to me. That is definitely not my house. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. As indicated, thank you, ladies, and thank you, Mkhasibe. Yes, thank you, Patience Mkhasibe. I'm currently acting as a senior magistrate in Point Branch Court, which is a family court, a community court, the first of its kind in our country. Others are available, obviously, abroad. They've advanced, and this is a pilot project that I'm involved in. I am an admitted advocate. I've practiced as an advocate. I've been championing legal education, so it was quite easy for me to say yes to SABWiL when she offered me this opportunity to speak to you, ladies and gents. I am as well permanently employed as an additional magistrate in Region 6, Durban, which is now referred to as Cluster A. It is an interesting topic that has been chosen to be discussed, and I'm profoundly moved and honored to be a part of this movement. I did go through your YouTube channel, and I looked at a few videos of the beautiful work that you are doing, and it sits quite comfortably for me, and it resonates with me because I'm a firm believer of what is referred to as legal literacy or legal education. And I love the fact that young women have taken on such a position in our country to make certain that they do this. And I look forward to the conversation, and did work with,
are coming back. There's nothing you can do.
sorry about that. I did work very closely with Ms. Njogo, as we were both acting as magistrates at the time before she was taken from us by some of the companies that wanted her expertise. So I hope and I look forward to a good conversation, as she stated. And yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. A round of applause to our beautiful speakers. And wow, I am telling you, if you are still wondering why we do what we do, you now have the answer. It is to make sure that women and black women in particular, occupy the space. We need to be educated. We need to be informed and aligned and network with each other so that we can gain more. And we love our men that support these movements, that support these initiatives. Our goal is to teach. We are infused in the codes of Ubuntu, Zenzele, and we want to ensure that we spread the love and we hold each other's hands to make sure that everyone moves with us as we move. So without further ado, may I ask, just as a courtesy to all speakers and everyone that is here, when you are in the meeting already, may you kindly please mute yourself and just make sure that when you do speak or ask a question when the platform is open, there is less noise in your background, because it fits into everyone's speakers in the waves, so we may not be able to hear your question. So I would ask that if you may kindly please, while we work through other issues, technical issues with the bandwidth being low, and you will realize that at some point we will have our cameras on just to keep the bandwidth running. But we ask that the rest of you please keep your cameras off and yourselves muted. Thank you very much. I wish now to hand over to my DSG, Sidiso Kale, to proceed with the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, President. I think I should just start by saying Igama, lamakhosikazi, malibongwe. My name is Sidiso Kale. I am a law graduate and I'm currently a PLT candidate. Within this organization, I am the DSG, and right now my task is to just communicate with everyone who's joined us today in relation to the purpose of our gathered here today. And so in addressing that, I'll just firstly like to look at the word ethics and the definition of the word ethics. If we look to the Oxford Dictionary, ethics refers to a moral principle that governs a person's behavior or the conduct of an activity. Now, because gathered here today, we are within the legal industry, or we are touched by the legal industry, we then need to assess ethics from that point. So legal ethics. If we then look at that, we find that legal ethics has a narrow and a broad meaning. The narrow meaning of that would then refer to the regulations that govern the conduct of lawyers, simply, whilst the broad meaning of legal ethics is the moral principle of the legal profession. Seated here today, we are all presented with difficult and are exposed to difficult situations that will demand that we make difficult decisions. And often, these decisions will demand that we balance between a conflicting system of belief and ideas of what ethical behavior should entail. And it is in making these decisions that we then get to judge whether or not we are ethical people or have made ethical decisions. And yeah, basically it is for that reason that we're gathered here today. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we seem to be inundated daily with reports involving legal practitioners who are being struck off the roll for being dishonest or for dishonest conduct. And equally, for those of us who have been students, you seem to find questions or students who are embarking on a journey, basically, of trying to find out what is the consequences of some of the dishonest acts they may have embarked in. Now, if we take that into consideration, especially for those of us who are on the road to admission, and equally for those who are admitted, we need to ensure that we remain as ethical individuals, and accordingly, we need to maintain that status as fit and proper individuals. So the term fit and proper then comes in, which I think I would need to define. So basically, when we say that an individual is fit and proper, it is of utmost importance for us within the legal industry to ensure that we are fit and proper. Not only is this a legal requirement, but it's also something that is indispensable in order to avoid one from being struck off the roll from this esteemed profession. Now, if we check whether or not a person is a fit and proper person, we then look at two grounds. The first one being whether or not this person is honest, and the second being whether or not they've got integrity. When we then speak of honesty, we speak about someone who's not only willing to tell the truth about a situation, but is willing to tell the whole truth, and therefore providing a full disclosure. And on the point of integrity, we speak about someone who is honest and shows a consistent and uncompromising adherence to a strong moral and ethical principle and values. Within our topic of ethics, we also then need to consider that integrity is regarded as honesty and truthfulness, or in the accuracy of one's actions. And we then also need to keep in mind that whether or not we're fit and proper is actually a factual determination that will have to be made by the courts when we seek admission. And in closing my speech, ladies and gentlemen, I then need to just inform everyone who's here that if we look at the cases of some of the legal practitioners that were struck off, they were once regarded as fit and proper, and in all likelihood were familiar with the content of legal ethics. Now, it then falls upon us to realize how important it is to remain as fit and proper individuals. We need to ensure that we use our moral compass, and this realization should encourage us within the legal fraternity to take up the moral and social responsibility of ensuring that we are ethical and fit and proper legal servants for the public. I thank you very much for the opportunity, President, and I would like to return the reins back to our speaker, or rather our MC.
Thank you so much for that, DSG. That was very well coordinated and very succinct, straight to the point. I will now wish to ask Shailene to just proceed with the program for us. Thank you very much. Good morning, Shailene. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm so sorry I was struggling with my internet connection earlier, but I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy that everybody else could join us. I'd also just like to thank our DSG for that enlightening opening. Now we know what fit and proper person is, and also what this program is about. It's about legal ethics, and thank you for giving us that deep understanding. So I'd also just now like to hand over to our first speaker of the day. I'm very excited for this because it is our very own attorney Sibusiso Nhlapo, as our president mentioned earlier. He will be addressing us, and I'm extremely excited to hear him speak because, as I said earlier, he is our very own SABWiL alumnus, and so I will be handing over to him. If he could just please address us on what legal ethics is. Thank you so much.
If I may just chime in there, our speaker, Mr. Sibusiso, is currently experiencing difficulty with his network, but I think we can keep that item on hold for now, and we can go to the next item on the program.
Yes, I'm so sorry about that. Okay, not a problem at all. So then the speaker is, the second speaker of the day is Magistrate Mukasibe, who also was welcomed by the president earlier as a previous advocate and acting magistrate. So if she could just address us, I'm extremely excited for her to speak to us about legal ethics too. My network does not seem to be very cooperative this morning, but I'm still here. So if you cannot see me, I'm still here, and my mic has also been acting up, but I'm still here, guys. So thank you so much, and please a warm welcome for our second speaker, and we'd love to hear what she has to say.
Good morning once again, and thank you once again. I'm humbled and thank you. If I may refer to you as Shalin, with your permission, and you can also refer to me as Hlengiwe. A very wise young magistrate, Ms. Hlongwane, indicated to me the importance of us addressing each other by our first names, obviously in a respectable manner. She said to me while we were busy with case law meeting, it helps build rapport between a senior and a subordinate, and it's working perfectly fine in the private sector, in private companies. We need to then adopt same in the judiciary and try and infuse it one step at a time. So I'm Hlengiwe, ladies and gents. Please do not refer to me as magistrate. I am robed in the picture, but let's have this conversation. The beauty of what I read, I'm going to go to this poster that Ms. Siwe sent me when she asked me yesterday to be part of this, is that right now, Mr. Kali gave us a profound explanation of the meaning, different meanings of the word ethics. He gave us the dictionary meaning, the one dictionary meaning of the word ethics. He also gave us the legal understanding of, or the understanding of ethics in our profession. It talks to a lot. We take a lot of courses on this. Or a lot of us have gone through training on ethics. We're excited, we passed the board exams, etc. But if I may at this moment start with chapter 1 of the Constitution, what then resonated with myself when I was going through what SABWiL stands for. Chapter 1, Section 1 of the Constitution says the Republic of South Africa is one sovereign, democratic state founded on the following values. The first value that came to mind when I accepted this is the human dignity value, which then also speaks to the achievement of equality and advancement of human rights and freedoms. You get human dignity as well as a separate section in the Constitution. However, let us then skip to a different section altogether that I marked, which will then speak to, one second, ladies and gents, one of the rights that we need to uphold as we continue discussing the issue of our ethical behavior as jurists, if I may. I'll come back to that because I had marked it. However, I'm quoting the Constitution first because in everything that we do, especially us in the magistracy, we keep on being reminded that we're no longer creatures of statutes, but we are creatures of the Constitution. So in whatever it is that we are taught when it comes to, specifically as we talk of ethics today, we need to first remember that in its definition as said by Mr. Kali, it speaks to the core of affording and doing things and making certain that dignity is maintained at all times. That means in everything, in your poise that you attempt to do, in all the situations Mr. Kali indicated we meet up with on a daily basis, you should always be able to count to 10 before doing something that would be unethical. In all the stresses that our young attorneys and ourselves as well, I'm one of those that wasn't breaking even for about 7 years. We need to remember that we cannot, for instance, take bribes or find the short ways or shortcuts, because there are no shortcuts in life. There is a lot that may taint us in our journey as lawyers or in our different journeys as lawyers. I omitted to mention that I'm also deputy coordinator for the KZN branch of SABWiL. SABWiL is a South African chapter for International Association of Women Judges. And as such, being attached to that keeps me reminded constantly that everything that I do must be on par, must be ethical. Do you understand? I had touched on that. And when I'm looking at the advert, the main question here says, how do we then shape this trajectory so that dignity, equality, and freedoms that are infused in Ubuntu, which is a good philosophy, and the Zenzele, it always permeates. How do we ensure that? I do not wish to touch on things that an attorney must do in terms of not spending money that does not belong to you, that belongs to the trust. I'll let attorneys speak about that. But let me speak from the angle of my experience as a judicial officer, moving obviously back to when I was also an advocate, and just point on a few things that people do not mention. One of the scholars, as I was doing my research yesterday, I will remember the name, and now if I'm required to write something up and send you guys, I will do so because I responded haphazardly. One of the scholars said, in as much as legal ethics are taught in the bigger scheme of things, a lot is not being emphasized on morality. A lot is not being emphasized on respect. And for us as jurists to maintain us making decisions and making moves and walking within morality and walking with respect, I believe that a constant reminder needs to be given. And I'll say it once again, when Mr. Kale mentioned the issue of all the stuff that we come across, all the issues that we experience, one of the scholars did remind me as well, as I was going through my research, that we meet up with situations that at times push us to be tempted to do those things. Let's look at what's happening currently. I'll take it from the angle of me having, I started with articles at some point. Unfortunately, I did not finish them. Then I went on to be admitted as an advocate. A different situation, different circumstances, but I'm one of those that were called at the time a rebel advocate. I'm from the sidebar. But one thing I had picked up as I was growing in the profession was that we right now, looking at the picture now, we are depleting in terms of respecting ourselves, in terms of respecting the noble profession. It is regarded as a noble profession. However, it's dwindling now. And the sad part of it dwindling is that we are losing the ethics, we are losing the morality, we are losing the respect at the time the transformation, at the very best time the transformation is actually allowing us. SABWiL is an organization for women by women, and with the gents that are the friends of this movement, women are being raised. If I may, not saying I'm going to choose the word God, covering all else that is higher power, has said that it is time for transformation to happen. There are a lot of people that fought and died for certain things to happen for a young Black woman, such as ourselves. And of course, yes, I'm also young, very young. And right now, what we are losing, I'll give you another example of what I've been watching. When I was in practice at the time, I remember that the first thing that you'd need to do as an advocate or an attorney, when you're going to appear in a court that you've never appeared in before, you go into the chambers, you knock, you introduce yourself. Save for COVID of late, which has closed down the doors for a short while for introduction, and you would carry your right of appearance and respectfully greet that magistrate or that judge and say who you are. But within the magistracy now, a lot of that is not being done. A lot, I have picked up on a lot over the years and into my time as a magistrate, that we as young ones do not respect ourselves and the profession that we are in anymore. We find ourselves speaking as we wish to our seniors. We find ourselves stating verbatim that we do not understand protocol. A people is a people. We find ourselves where we are basically saying, to hell with everything that was fought for me to be here. And I don't mean to politicize this, but I needed to mention it because I started with the Constitution. For it to exist, a lot went into it. And for it to exist, it was for that very reason why we are here. It's for ladies like the alumni of SABWiL to be able to be in spaces where they could never be before. Let's look at Ubuntu. The philosophy, which is a Nguni term, meaning humanity. Humanity is a huge thing. If you're talking humanity, if you're talking humility, it means, it would refer to ngesiZulu, because I am Zulu, Besotho and other Nguni languages can help me out. Ukuzithoba, ukuzehlisa, ukuhlonipha. Humanity speaks to that. Our profession is that noble, but it is being lost as we grow or as the younger generation comes in. Let's look at the different ways to describe Ubuntu. In isiZulu, we say umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu, in isiXhosa umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. It is a universal bond that keeps us glued together as South Africans. Kasisotho motu ke motu ka batho. And I picked up a Shona version. Ndirine kuti tiri. In other words, we need to constantly be reminded that I am because you are. And each time and each step that we take, you need to be able to say, what will be said on my name? I think those portions are left out in the formal training on ethics. Those portions are left out, and as a result, it is then going down the drain as we watch it. Now, how do we then ensure? I mentioned earlier that I'm very big on legal education, very big on training. I believe, I'll say this, I was once a train assistant, and that would mean that I assisted the train driver at Transnet at some point in my life. And drivers, no matter how long service they had, years of service they had, they would always go on refresher courses. And I salute SABWiL for their initiative and them as a movement. We need to constantly remind each other in training. Take, for example, SAJ, the Judicial College or Institute, Training Institute. SAJ makes certain that magistrates at all times are refreshed in terms of knowledge. I'm making that typical example. If we keep on, I remember one of the guests that will be attending an event for celebrating our Deputy Chief Justice and our Judge President from KZN, which event is happening tonight, is the former Judge President Ubabu Japi. Ubabu Japi believed very strongly in what he refers to as legal literacy. The more we project these things, the less, I believe, Mr. Gale, we will have reports on young attorneys being struck off the roll. Before, it used to be such a shocker to the system when you hear attorney so-and-so, attorney Mkasibe has been struck off the roll. It was a moment. Right now, we look at those emails and we page through and we flip another one. You'll find that in a day, you're given about 4 to 5 reports on attorneys that have been struck off the roll. It seems that even us personally, as I said, we have lost respect and fear of ihlazo ourselves. And I strongly believe that by you connecting with everyone on a regular basis, as you continue to do, a lot can be then infused back into what is dignity. There is another definition which will then support my citing of the definition of ethics. There's a second definition in the dictionary that says it is the moral correctness of specific conduct. It is the branch, that is the third one, it is the branch of knowledge that deals with moral principles, generally speaking. Formalizing it in our profession has actually taken away the fact that it is applicable everywhere. If you're going to touch on Ubuntu, if you're going to touch on Vuk'uzenzele, and if you're going to touch on ethics and morality as a whole, you will find that in everything that we do, we need to be ethical in our decisions. We have, I'm not certain whether you're aware of Judge Tulare, who was a chief magistrate formerly and has just been appointed, I believe, in the year 2021 as a judge somewhere in the Western Cape. He said to us when we went for training as magistrates in the year 2020, he said to us as young magistrates, magistracy, even at the bottom of the food chain, magistracy is a calling. And if you are here because you think you're going to make money, the door is open for you to leave because it's not about money. You will find that it's not just, and when I'm saying attorneys, maybe I should have phrased it as lawyers. It speaks to us as well. Speaks to us as well. It's quite embarrassing when I recall in 2020, 2021, there were videos circulating of Black advocates being extremely disrespectful to judges. It's common fashion, and somebody just switches on the phone and records, and it's a laughing matter. It's spread all over the show, and nothing is being done to say, correct this. One of the recent big cases, I'm certain everybody knows which case I'm referring to. We watched one of our own being completely disrespectful, completely unethical in behavior. And we watched, and many of us laughed. And the question I had, who are around this gentleman that cannot tap his shoulder and remind him of the training that he got, and remind him of the spirit of Ubuntu, which spirit needs to constantly be in our minds. You apply it in any field. It is applicable in any field you may be. It's not just about us as lawyers, but what sits with me, or what sat with me as I was invited into to this event to present, was, can I just speak on respect that we accord each other and ourselves? There is a tendency, I'm being distracted. I believe someone was unmuted.
May I ask that please all attendees mute themselves when you come into the meeting? Thank you very much.
All right. Another form that I would love to touch on, like I said, I'll leave the formal one to the Fundis, which Mr. Kale touched on. I'll leave it to Ms. Njogo, no, Mr. Ntlap. Let's talk about something also that we've observed, or I've observed. Ms. Njogo will vouch for me on this. Dress code. Dress code in our courts. Dress code at work. No matter how much our superiors try and remind us of how we are expected to present ourselves, it is an issue. I walked into Durban Magistrates Court yesterday, rushing through.
Anyway, you seem to be on mute.
I think someone keeps muting me, unfortunately. Thank you so much. I've unmuted. I was saying that when I walked into Durban Magistrates Court yesterday on the issue of dress code, I met up with a young attorney that I've never met before, has never appeared before me. But as she was ascending the stairs, realizing that she's an attorney because she had a gown in her left hand, her dress that she was wearing was extremely, unacceptably short for an environment of that caliber. We have lost that as well. There's a gap. I understand also the heat waves are horrible, etc. We have lost that. We will find instances where an advocate will not dress properly. I mean, as an advocate, we've always called and referred to ourselves as penguins. Where that flew out and introduced pink shirts and red dresses, I have no idea. And it seems as the more that the older generation, who are our leaders currently, try and remind us of the nobleness of this profession on issues such as these that are not paid attention to, us as the younger generation are adamant with no backup, with no substantiation, that we will dress however we want. It is what is in here that is important, not what I look like, which is another huge problem. A court setup is a very noble setup. The dignity that comes with being a lawyer, from being a student, up to you practicing, up to judgeship, is very noble. You cannot expect yourself, Mr. Gale, to treat the profession while you are a lawyer as if it's not important, and then expect that you will then change should you be given an opportunity to be a judge. You will take those habits with you. Do you understand what I'm saying? We need to learn and go back and stop saying it is old ways. Stop picking on the golden oldies in the profession who have maintained the stature of this profession and throw it out the window. Those are the main things. The way we address our magistrates in court. And yes, I will say the way we as magistrates address you, because we are still lawyers. There's a group on Facebook that belongs to lawyers. It's a KZN group, or is it? I believe it's international, but it's a group of lawyers that I joined back in 2016 before I was a magistrate. I've never left. There was a day where a conversation was struck by one attorney, young attorney, about us as the magistrates not respecting them or treating them with dignity. So this applies across the board. That is what I'm saying. You will find videos that are circulating, or voice notes that are circulating of Mkasibe being extremely disrespectful to an attorney because I'm over there, I am God. It speaks to saying when you leave home and you go to work, are you representing your family best? Because at the end of the day, if you have no higher being, or if you have nowhere to look back and say, what would my mom say? I'm making a typical example for those who have moms. I'm not singling out who does not. I just wanted to touch on that side of morality. I wanted to touch on that side of affording dignity to others, on the part of maintaining the integrity that comes with this profession. That as the young ones come in, and this is dating back from way before I was even a magistrate, and I'm still referring to us as young ones. I'm including our generation. Things have started changing. We lack respect for ourselves, and as a result, we lose the ethics. So how on earth are we going to maintain now the legal ones if we lose the basic ones? Honesty. I'll touch on honesty. We find many times that attorneys will double book or overbook their days, their appearances in court, and will not be there for a client in family court, for instance, where I am, for a client who has also paid for his appearances. Double booked himself, is in criminal court or civil, because he thinks he has friends and with the clerks of court, or he has friends in the court, leaves that poor person unrepresented, asks them or makes them take and set a date on their own. Is that being honest? Is that affording dignity and integrity? Is that respecting the court setting? It isn't. But mainly, is that respecting the client who legal ethics demand that you always uphold? They are your client, even if you're working pro bono. It's things like that that touch on honesty. And there's a lot of that. There are a lot of those examples. I would take the whole day giving you those examples. We have lawyers these days that will walk into a court setup, do not bow, speak to a magistrate seated. Speak seated. And everybody knows what happens in court. Everybody should know what the decorum is, save for a young one who's just been thrown in the deep end. And our duty, as we are told at SABWiL, is to make certain that we do not bruise you. Hence, I'm saying I also crush my peers that would find themselves on the wrong side of ethical behavior as well. If you, for example, Charlene, as young as you are, come into my court, you're finding your feet, you do not know procedure, my task is not to bash you and tell you, figure it out. What are you doing in my court? That is not ethical of me. I need to make certain that Charlene walks out of there loving her job. She might have walked in super scared. She does not know what she's going to do, but she must leave having felt protected by that magistrate sitting over there, because the magistrate's behavior is ethical in the general sense of things. How we treat each other as opposition in court. I remember a day where prosecutor and attorney would have a decent conversation. Now I think we are in American movies and we are very crass with one another. Does that maintain ethical morality, respectful integrity in behavior? No. You are on the battlefield, yes, but in issues of law. In issues of law, not in your personal capacity. We at SABWiL are busy promoting womanhood, sisterhood. I'm making a typical example of sisterhood because, yes, this is a women's organization. Yes, we have gents, but agree with me that it is quite difficult to get women in one room and find peace because we do not respect one another. A young female attorney or advocate who walks in her short skirts into court, you will say nothing as a magistrate, but behavior-wise, no apologies, no introduction, no may I approach the bench, Your Worship, so I may apologize, this and that. Fortunately for those that would appear before me, I turn into something else when I'm sitting up there. I remember when Mr. Njogo asked me, I started criminal court before 2 weeks before her, she may correct me. She asked me how's the bench, because we were in family court and we hardly found ourselves on that big chair, you know, with that big bench. And I said to her, the seat, the gown, on their own, they're very powerful. They have their own power. They come with the power of you knocking at the door and everybody shifting, you opening the door and everybody getting up immediately and waiting for you to let them know that they can sit. That alone is power. The decision that you need to make is how are you going to handle that power? Are you going to be big-headed and arrogant? Or are you going to welcome it with humility and work with the team that you have? All of us need constant reminding. Hence, I said I would love for you, SABWiL, to infuse this over and over again and invite other magistrates as well. I see in the room we have Ms. Shoba. She's one of my inspirations for years. Some of my team members had asked to join, and they are part of this. And most of everyone that's in there or in this talk from Durban or that hails from KZN are people that I've looked up to, and I've learned how to keep being ethical, respectful, afford people dignity, and protect the integrity of our profession. We are taught even when we are sentencing or convicting or dealing with a criminal case. I remember, Mr. Njogo will remember that I was once in reception court for sexual offences, preparing bail applications to send up to the regional court. A person is accused of rape, has not been proven guilty, isn't it? And even if he is, let's say you find yourself in a space where you're convicting someone and they did something, whether you've experienced that before or not, don't personalize it. Don't treat them with disrespect just because you think, oh, boss, or I get, no. You're not boss, or you're not God either. You are there to carry out and administer justice in a fair manner. And with fairness comes respect. With fairness comes making certain, Mr. Khan, that you as a presiding officer, for instance, and even as a prosecutor, you afford that accused person in that rape matter, in that armed robbery matter, I don't care what is before you or who is before you, you afford them dignity so that even when you sentence them, I usually say I sentence with a smile. When I was in criminal court, I do not, I'm learning, dear Lord, and teaching myself every day that it is not about you. It is not about you. You need to be able to say, I delivered a judgment. If it goes on appeal, the judges would have listened and heard how respectful you were, even if you're convicting that person for 3 years or whatever the case may be. We're doing our job, and our task is to make certain that all things justice. Let's look at the definition of justice. All things justice are carried out correctly. And justice being one of the core loves of the God Almighty. Justice in the definition in the dictionary says just behavior or treatment. And obviously it will speak to us as magistrates, but it's the administration of the law or authority in maintaining this. And God is a God of justice. We seem to forget that. Let's take it back to Judge Justice Tulare. Our profession is very noble. Yes, he spoke of magistracy, and I'm telling all that are listening here and our lawyers, either in the making, etc., whichever way you are right now, you are called for this. And if you're not, you can change. You can do another degree, my angel, and go. But everywhere you go, you're going to work with people. So Ubuntu, that is in this question, touches every sphere of our lives. Where you service people, you must have that. So to answer that question, SABWiL, do it more, infuse it more, educate more, give Kenyiwe more time to prepare more, and call again, she'll be on par. Yeah, that would be it for now. And if something else does come up, maybe in the questioning, I don't know whether I've gone over time. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lingiwi. I hope I'm saying your name, pronouncing your name right. I know that what you've said, really, I think we're all going to take that and use it as tools to hone our skills in the legal profession. You've mentioned so many things that, so many amazing, inspiring, inspirational things that I think that we all needed a reminder on. And also one of the things that you said was that we need to respect ourselves, because I think that the public, their view of us has also deteriorated along the way, as you've mentioned. And I think that now when they think of lawyers and advocates and magistrates, they don't think about people upholding justice. They think, oh, lawyers are liars, they're deceitful, they're deceptive. And I think it also brings it back to what you mentioned about Ubuntu, and also needing to relearn and chain, and then just keep reminding ourselves why we are here, why we are doing this. So thank you very, very much. That was very, 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 very insightful. So we thank you so much. And yeah, just thank you. Thank you 1,000 times.
Thank you, ma'am. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, so now we are going to move on to Sibusiso. I think that his network is back. So we'd love to hear what he has to say and what he has to contribute to the conversation. So if Sibusiso could please just enlighten us on his thoughts about the issue. I'll pass the mic over to him now.
Good morning. Am I audible? Can you hear me? Okay, awesome. Good morning. My name is Ubuntu. I apologize sincerely for whatever the late coming. It's been a hectic morning, especially using my phone. Usually use Microsoft. I'm not a fan of Microsoft. I prefer Zoom. Maybe that's why it was punishing me this morning. Anyway, thank you so much, and thank you to acting magistrate, Madam Shengiwe. Thank you so much for your words. I don't have much to say, but I was asked to speak about ethics as a young person, as a young legal practitioner, especially as you transition from being a student to becoming a professional. And that I would focus my talk on, or my short talk on. So as a legal practitioner, as a young legal practitioner, it is difficult to be ethical if you are in an unethical society. An unethical society is a society that thinks that money comes first and clients come second, because the moment you prioritize money is the moment you lose the whole reason of becoming a lawyer. I know most of us want to drive Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Maseratis, but that's not the point of being a legal practitioner. Being a legal practitioner means that you should ensure justice, whether you do civil law or criminal law. An ethical lawyer does that. And there's some challenges that we face as legal practitioners, particularly that the public sees us as unethical, as greedy, and as dishonest. And I think we have all heard the phrase "lawyers like money." What's demand? So, how does one become unethical? It starts small. You don't just start stealing cash monies worth millions and millions of dollars of rands. It starts small. You become unethical by cutting a corner here and there and stretching the truth a bit. None of the real things that you do at first almost unthinkably seem to be so bad. I apologize for the background sound. I'm on the road, so I truly apologize for that. So it starts small with a little change in an invoice. So you would charge a client a certain amount of money for time work, and you start becoming unethical by then putting an extra time that you know it did not work, or going an extra mile and your boss requiring you to have a timesheet, and you then start lying when you have to report to your clients and your boss. It's small, right? But it then builds up. It builds up and it builds up, and it gets to a point where there's no return. The dilemma that we have is that we should ensure justice and assist our clients at one hand, and on the other hand, we should promote justice in society. So then how do you balance the two? How then do you balance the two? I see someone saying, can I move? Am I not audible? Hello?
So just the background noise is overshadowing you.
Okay, maybe can I just maybe move? Let me go to the car maybe. Might be a bit better. Just give me a moment, please.
So while we wait for our speaker, how amazing it is to see how the basis of everything ethical begins from home, what you are being taught at home. And it's so beautifully tied up by Ubuntu, saying that the little things that you start doing, with family, or the things that you were taught at home, all built up to being an ethical person. This reminds me of a very old saying that we now take for granted. Charity begins at home. And charity not only being a giver, or being an open person, or too meek, or whatever the case may be, whatever they can label it as, but also being ethical, being honest with yourself, being honest with people around you, being honest with the work that you do, as Usbusiso just mentioned a little bit, to say, just filling out that timesheet, that little number that you changed, now I'm going to make it a 9. It's not really a 1, I mean, they won't see it. Those little things. When we are taught at home to say, don't steal sugar, it's a build up to being a morally upstanding citizen later on. And it sort of brings us back to exam rules, where we read our exam rules every time, but you ask yourself, as law students, do all law students actually apply all those rules that we see on the exam rules? Don't bring a programmable calculator into the exam room, and you still bring it, but they said don't bring it. things like don't bring a ruler that you've written notes on at the back, and we see these things. I remember one time there were first-year students that were actually suspended in one university. I will not be mentioning names; the name will remain unknown. For cheating in their paper, and I found it to be so disturbing because we found it to be. I found it to be disturbing because this is the first point of ethics where you learn to be honest in your dealings with everyone. So while we wait for Usiso, I don't know if we can just go to Siwe while Usiso is still preparing a space where he can speak to us. But in the meantime, I see in the comments, okay, I see Spusiso is back. Welcome back. No? You may.
Thank you so much. Is it this? I hope this is better. Is this better?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
You're on, we appreciate.
Colleague, are you still there? Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You are audible.
Okay. Thank you. I really do apologize. I'm on my way to First State, by the way. But I wanted to honor this invite and not commit. I think maybe it just brings back to what we're talking about today, the issue of ethics. As a legal practitioner, you're expected much. And the moment you commit yourself to certain things, you should make sure that you do commit to those things. So I committed to Ukuli last year that I would be talking, and I will continue to talk. Anyway, that's not very important. So I'm being asked to just recap a bit. I'm not gonna say much of what I've already said. I'm just gonna speak on what just highlight. So I spoke about the challenges that we face as legal practitioners, because the public perceives us as being unethical, as being greedy, and as being dishonest. And I also said, how then do we move from such a thing? I then spoke about how it starts to be, how a legal practitioner starts being unethical. It doesn't start with you stealing millions and millions from the trust monies, but it starts small with taking 200,000 or not 200, 20,000 to go and gamble, on a Friday, go and win 50,000 and replace that money. Yes, you replaced it, but you still took it and it was not yours. And that's the point of what we're trying to say here. As a legal practitioner, we must uphold a certain standard and we must maintain that standard. We, especially as our generation should not be the generation that drops the standard. We should rather uplift the standard and to show that the perception that the public has of us as legal practitioners is not what's really going on in the profession. Yes, there are a few rotten potatoes, but not all of us are rotten potatoes. Some of us are tomatoes, some of us are cheese, some of us are bologna, So yeah, I'll just continue. So what then leads to you stealing and starting small? After a few years, you then realize that you are unable to separate your professional life from your personal life in terms of the ethics, right? So some of us in this forum are probably religious, whether it's Muslims, whether we are Christians, whether we are Judaism, and so forth and so forth. We, as the religious community, know that there are certain morality that we need to uphold. But then the question that I remember when I was doing my first year, I think one of the modules told, it was mentioned that when you're studying law, you must separate morality and the law, which is understandable because as a Christian, I can't expect a Muslim to do as I do. It's understandable, right? But then how then does ethics apply to this whole, how is ethics the gap between morality and the law? Because what is good to Ukuli may not be good to me, you know? And that's where the challenge is. And that's why it's important for the Legal Practice Council as our regulatory body to ensure that it does set standards and rules that we should follow as legal practitioners. I agree with the magistrate Klengiwe. I agree with her that it is up to us to uphold. You cannot come, especially as, let me give you an example. There are certain clothes that we should wear in court. We know safe colors are black, white, and gray. Those are the safe colors, and navy blue. But then imagine, for instance, I appear before a magistrate or even a judge, and I wear a black suit, which is acceptable, but a yellow t-shirt. You see, it doesn't make sense because now, because the color is so bright, it just overshadows me as a person. Me, I'm dark. So you can imagine me wearing a yellow t-shirt. It's just not going to work. And I'm not talking about the issue of race. It's just an example because the shirt is so distracting. That's why sometimes some rules are good to follow. There is no way that you can go to a client and consult with a short pen, or called a bum shot. There's no way. Which client is going to take you seriously? Because the client will think that you are probably a fly-by-night legal practitioner. You're probably going to run away with their money. So these are simple things, but the more you think about them, they are actually to our benefit. So just to move forward, we now as legal practitioners, especially as attorneys and advocates, are stuck between assisting our clients on the one end and promoting justice to society. How do we then do that? Because one has to suffer, right? How can I assist my clients and society and still promote justice to society? These are conflicting to some extent. So what is professional ethics? It concerns the rules of conduct, principles of profession ethics, norms to judge a fit and proper person. And what is a fit and proper person? We always hear, especially when getting admitted, that you must be fit and proper. But what does that mean in the profession? The profession of an attorney or an advocate is an honorable one and demands as such. You do not become an attorney or an advocate or a legal practitioner of some sort and not become an honorable person. And by honorable, we don't mean parliamentary. I think parliamentary honorable has become the different definition on its own. But we have our own legal honorable sense. And it's simple. It's 3 values. We need to be completely honest with ourselves, with our clients, and with our colleagues. By our colleagues, I don't mean people in the office. I mean people who are in the same profession as you. Number 2, we need to be reliable. We need to be reliable as I am reliable today. I'm on the way to Free State, but I'm here, so I'm reliable. Number 3, there needs to be integrity from its members. So we need to be people who uphold integrity, who are reliable and who are honest. These are simple, right? But hard at the same time. because I could have just cancelled. For example, I'm using myself as an example because I think what happened today is just is an example of our talk. It just gels smoothly. I could have just become unreliable and dropped Kuli at the last minute. Now she'll have to, not Kuli specifically, by Kuli I mean SABWiL, the team. I could have dropped them and said, yes, I'm not gonna do this anymore. I'm gonna focus on my own business. But what does it say about me as a person? Because tomorrow there will be certain issues that I will need to address with SABWiL. Do you think SABWiL is gonna be considering me for future talks or future activities? No. It's, you see. So the personal qualities of a fit and a proper person is that, as I said, it's integrity, objectivity, dignity, power of judgment, knowledge and technical skill, capacity for hard work, respect for the legal order, and a sense of equity or fairness. Simple, very simple. As a fit and a proper person, you are supposed to uphold the law. You do not assist your client in breaking the law. You are honest and not dishonest. And you are supposed to be the example to everyone around you. You should be a point of reference. There's a lot of examples that we can use for what the person can be. There's a lot of examples that we can use to measure the ethics. For example, using the office printer to print 50 pages of your sister or brother's CV without the permission of the office or your director. Is that really ethical? You know, going and taking money that doesn't belong to you. Although, yes, you are going to replace it at a later stage, but you're still taking money that's not yours. Are you ethical? When you commit fraud or assault as a legal practitioner, are you ethical? You know, there's a scholar called Louis. I forgot the surname. He had a golden rule, and those who have done legal ethics know the golden rule. The golden rule of ethics says that a practitioner must avoid all conduct which, if unknown, could damage his reputation as an honorable lawyer and honorable citizen. Simple, nice definition, flows well, right? It's important for us as legal practitioners and the LPC to hold us accountable. I remember last year there was an attorney who was struck off the road for 800 rand. I don't know if he was bribed with 800. I can't remember the story properly, but I think he was bribed with 800 rand or did something in the Middleburg Magistrate Court. Imagine losing your career for 800 rand. Does it make sense? You work so hard for all these years and you want to be bribed with 800 rand. We should not devalue ourselves. We should not degrade ourselves. It is important for us to maintain the dignity and the ethics of the profession. Where do we find the rules of professional conduct? Obviously, we find it from the Legal Practice Council. We find it from the Legal Practice Act. We find it from the Rules of Law Society. We find it from the courts. We find it from the magistrates. We kind of find it from the court decisions, common law, the test books, foreign influences, public interest. So there's no way where someone will claim ignorance on these rules, right? There's a relationship between a legal practitioner and his client. The client is the most important person in your life at the time when you're consulting. You forget about your girlfriend or your boyfriend, your wife. At that time when you're with your client, they are secondary. And the client is primary. Why is the client primary? Because the client will not come to you if they do not require your assistance. They come to us because they want a solution, and we should provide a solution. So we should not be a reason why they break the law further. Because nobody wants to go to jail. Nobody wants to be sued. They come to us because they want solution. So your client is dependent on you, and you are also dependent on your client. Because your client is dependent on you to find a solution, you are dependable on your client for fees. You should not fight with your client. I know there's some clients that are very difficult. I dealt with them. I can mention a few, but it's not allowed by the LPC, so I won't mention. But I know a lot of clients that are very difficult. Those difficult clients should not be the reason for you to then change your ethics in the profession. Accepting a mandate. You as an attorney, if you are going to take the attorney route, are not obligated to accept a mandate. However, as advocates, I'm not sure. I remember somewhere saying that advocates cannot refuse a brief unless certain circumstances are allowed. The advocates in the room will correct me. But then the mandate that the client gives you should be upheld and should be honored. It should be respected, and you must do whatever is possible for you to execute such a mandate. As I close, we as legal practitioners are regulated, and as I said, that we cannot be flexible. As a legal communicate with your clients. If you're unhappy about certain issues, communicate, because you do not want to lead yourself and find yourself in a position where you are being reported by the LPC because you are not reporting to your client, you're not updating to your clients, you are not communicating anything to your clients, yet you expect fees. Rights of appearance for advocates, attorneys, and candidate attorneys are different. Candidate attorneys can, as you know, can only appear in the magistrate courts, in the district courts. Attorneys, unless they have the right of appearance in the high courts, can only appear in the magistrates courts, in the district or regional courts. After 3 years, they are applied to the high court, and they are then able to appear in the high courts. Whereas advocates appear in the magistrate court, the high courts, automatically. And I always had a problem with this, because as attorneys and advocates, we have the luxury to choose our paths. There's an old age debate between whether advocates or attorneys are better. Who's better? You know? But when it comes to appearance, for me, my issue is, I think we should open the discussion and the debate as to, we are all doing an LLB. We are all admitted by the high courts, attorneys and advocates. But how come the one goes and becomes automatically admitted to appear in the high court, whereas the other one has to wait for 3 years? It doesn't make sense. So those are kind of issues that we should debate and have a constructive debate about as ethical legal practitioners. We should ensure that as we conduct such debates, we do not attack each other personally, because this is not a personal battle. This is a professional battle. And as a professional, as you debate, even with your friends, never attack someone personally. And as I close, my plea to us in this room, on this platform, is to ensure that we uphold the standards of legal practitioners. There's some days where you will be tempted. There's some days where you will be misled. But I pray that you do not put your career at risk for a few thousands. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, CBC, for enlightening us on some of the golden rules of the profession as well as the code of conduct. It is always very nice to get a refresher, as previously mentioned by Hlengiwe. One of the things that you said also that stood out, I think, was that we're not all, how can we be ethical in an unethical environment? And I think it also it links in with this thing that I heard was, if you look at an apple tree, right, from afar, all the apples on the tree look exactly the same. But when you go closer to the tree, some of the apples are red, maybe, some of the apples might be green, some of them are sweet and some might be sour. So I think it's also, when you look at the legal profession as an apple tree, everybody thinks that the legal profession as a whole just looks like, you just see the tree, but you don't actually see the different aspects. So I think that also plays a role in ethics, and also one way, as you were saying, one way for us as legal practitioners to sort of uphold ethics within the profession is just to by staying true to our values, and also remembering the golden rules and code of conduct, and also just not taking bribes and not risking our legal profession over an 800 rand maybe. So thank you so much for that very insightful address. We do appreciate it a lot. And yeah, just so thank you very, very much for that, and for taking the time to be with us, even though you are busy, as you said, you are on the road. So we do appreciate that too. And then last but definitely not least, we're going to hear from our final speaker. And she is, as previously mentioned, former attorney and acting magistrate, Siweli Njogo. So if she could please tell us her thoughts and also her ideals, we would love to hear from her. Thank you so much.
Right, thank you so much. It's very difficult to be last because everyone has probably touched on everything that I wanted to say. So I will try to make it interesting. I do know that when you're last, it's usually the graveyard shift and people are, starting to doze off. So I'm hoping that you will keep awake for this part, and I will be as quick as I can. So as already mentioned, I have had, I would say, when it was happening, I thought it was a misfortune of being in different areas of law. I started as an admitted attorney. I practiced. I then moved to working in corporate. I then went and I sat on the bench. And now I am a pupil advocate. So I would think that I've almost done it all. We've just started our pupillage, and when I was explaining my history, I was told, wow, you've done almost everything. Are you going to be an academic now? So I think, I'm not sure if I can go that route. But yeah, so it sparked to me that, there's a lot of opportunities in the legal profession, and, with ethics, cuts across all of those professions. I wanted to speak about the element of Ubuntu because for me, I feel that it is still and will always be the foundation of where our ethics come from. I think we have touched on that as well, to say that if you're a Christian or whatever religion you're from, there are certain values that you grow up knowing. I think when I was growing up, it did take a village to raise everyone. You knew that you couldn't do anything with the neighbors seeing you. So it wasn't about my parents are not around, so I can do anything. So ethics as well, I feel you need to look at it from a space where you don't have to be seen. Whenever you do things behind the scenes, everyone needs to know, or no one needs to know, but you need to continue with your ethics. In terms of our profession around ethics, it was touched on that we are looking at the code of conduct that we have in place for legal practitioners, as well as an element of seeing certain sections from the Legal Practice Act as well that speaks on ethics. I did read, it is a case, a summary of the case It's on the, I think, Durabus. That's where I got it. It is a case of Mzaiya versus the Road Accident Fund. I'm sure you all know most of the attorneys that are usually struck off the roll. The highest of those are practicing in road accident fund matters. So this is a matter, it's a 2021 matter. And just to, I won't go through the in-depth facts. All I can say is that there were certain inconsistencies in the date of the accident. So those that have practiced around road accident funds or motor vehicle accident claims, you would know that there is prescription. So if your date of the accident occurred over a certain amount of years, then obviously your matter would have, or your claim would have been prescribed, and you can't claim from the road accident fund. So in this case, there was an inconsistency. What was interesting is that the affidavit from the attorney in this case, or the legal practitioner in this case, claimed that the date of the accident was in 2007. But everything else from the point of the Section 19F affidavit, which is from one of the family members or the claimant, it claimed that the accident was in 2019. So what happened there is the court didn't specifically look towards the Code of Conduct or the Legal Practice Act. However, it did raise 5 principles, and those principles, you can align them to the Code of Conduct and the Act. The first principle was that legal practitioners need to uphold values of honesty and integrity. We have a duty to the court, and that duty needs to be upheld. We have a duty not to offer or rely on false evidence. We cannot allow a client to dispose of an affidavit that has false information. And when we are drafting, whatever documents that we are drafting, whether it's a letter, whether it's any pleadings, we need to ensure that we provide a summary of what really happened. And it mustn't be contrary to the client's version. So those 5 principles, I think, will have to resonate whenever we do anything as legal practitioners. And I heard Ms. Hlengiwe as well as the second speaker. So you did mention dress code. So it is interesting. I think when we look at the history of our dress code, because we are robed in black, I did come across something, and I'll just read it over to you guys. It says the black color was chosen because of 2 reasons. Firstly, colors back in the day and dyes were not readily available back then, and purple was signified as the color for royalty, and thus the closest color was black. So the main reason behind wearing the black coat or the black robe, as you would know, is because black is the color of authority and power. Black represents submission of oneself, and I think that's important. I'll repeat it again. Black represents submission of oneself. Just like priests wear black to show submission to God, lawyers or legal practitioners in this case wear black to show their submission to justice. So I found that very interesting because we often wear black and we don't understand sometimes why we wear it. And as a legal practitioner, you should always know that when you're robed in that specific color, you are showing submission to justice. We are here. I think it was mentioned that it is a calling. Yes, it's a calling. And our calling is always to submit to administrating justice at all times. I will try, colleagues, because a lot has been said. I think the one thing that was also mentioned by our speaker is that the reason why we are moving away from calling each other by surnames, etc., is to start, in a way, respecting ourselves and not seeing different classes. So the one thing that was taught to us while we started our pupillage is that we do not address each other by Mr. Advocate, Senior Counsel, etc. We respond or we speak to each other via our first names, regardless of seniority. So that to me showed that we are starting, or not, I'm not going to say starting, but we are trying to show that we're the same. We are the same. We all out here to ensure justice. So putting titles to certain things does create an element of, you know, not being on the same page. So I wanted to share that as well, that it is applicable to advocates as well, to speak or use our first names. I also just wanted to share around the expectations in terms of ethics. So our expectations, or the expectations from the public, is that we need to maintain high standards of honesty and integrity at all times. We need to act in our clients' best interests. And I think, you know, when we act in our client's best interest, yes, the client is paying. However, if the client wants us to do things that are outside of the law, or what we would deem is in accordance to the law, you need to speak on that. You cannot continue with that. We need to be transparent with issues around the case. I think most of I'll just draw on my experience, as I did also have a law firm. My law firm was Impans and Associates. And when I started, having come from corporate, you know, with corporate, you do your work, you go about your work. You're only responsible to telling your boss what's happening as and when your boss asks. So when you open a law firm and clients want, every day, clients want to know what's happening. So you need to continue informing your clients on the progress of the matter, the costs of the case, etc. You need to treat your client with respect and also confidentiality. I think as legal practitioners, we hear a lot, and some of the information from our clients does become spicy information that we would most likely want to share, but you need to ensure confidentiality at all times. If there's a conflict of interest, we all know that you need to remove yourself from that matter. As when I was sitting at the bench as well, there was a time where I wanted to know how would I recuse myself from certain matters, not because of anything, but you know, there's a thin line. Having been practicing, you obviously know most of the people that appear before you, and sometimes they tell you on their matters before they appear. So recusal is also important when you're sitting on the bench, any bench, as a magistrate or a judge, any judicial officer, you can recuse yourself as well. I want to speak about my experience as a legal practitioner in corporate. I think that we have spoken from someone that's practicing currently, and obviously thank you as a judicial officer. I just want to say that I have worked in SOE, so state-owned entities do have a lot of drama as well. There's a lot of issues around corruption. There's a lot of issues around ethical behavior, corporate governance. And that doesn't mean that when you're a legal practitioner in that space, you throw away your fit and proper foundation or your legal ethics. You continue with that. So in corporate, I was a compliance officer. In most cases, as a compliance officer, you are there to ensure that the organization complies with its legal requirements. But that's not only legislation, that's policies and procedures as well that are designed to ensure that, you know, the company complies with governance as a whole. So ethical conduct or behavior is also necessary in a corporate environment. That's why we have human resources department with their policies. I would say the fortune or misfortune of specializing a lot in procurement law matters. So procurement law matters, tenders, We all know the evaluation of tenders, all the issues around tenders. So I had the opportunity of being in that space. There is a document that we sign in the corporate space. It's called the Declaration of Interest. So that is designed to, for you to sign that whatever happens, whatever you do within that space, there's no conflict. You're not doing work outside of the company. You are not acting in a way that will, endanger the reputation of the organization that you're in. So we did have those things as well there. Most, progressive SOEs are getting ethics committees as well, which is a good space. So when we have ethics committees, they are there or they're established to assist the board ensuring that their values, because now our company also has values. It's there and designed to be an oversight of the values of the organization as a whole. So I just wanted to share that as well, that if for anything you wanted to get away from ethics, corporate is the same. Ethical behavior is still required there as well. I think, colleagues, I would have liked to share a bit more, but I do know that we've got time constraints, and my colleagues have already spoken a lot on this. I think when I was looking at why are there so many cases of unethical behavior, there's a thought that says, whether we like it or not, guys, sometimes hunger, and I think someone touched on it, financial issues. When you start as a legal practitioner, you're not making enough, you're not possibly breaking even. The Law Society, or in this case, the Legal Practice Council, still requires you to pay certain subscriptions. And without that Fidelity Fund certificate, you cannot practice. So what is happening now is that certain legal practitioners are getting into the space where they're not making enough money, they're not paying their annual subscriptions, and they're basically practicing without that Fidelity Fund certificate, which is one of the reasons why they get struck off in some instances, or there are disciplinary hearings around that space. So I think we all do understand that life does happen, and I'm not in a space to say let your circumstances outweigh your responsibility around ethics. I'm definitely not saying that. What I'm saying is we need to be aware of why we do certain things, and that is the basis of our conduct in all instances. I'm sure there are questions, colleagues. On my side, I just wanted to share from someone that has had a law firm, from someone that has sat on the bench. And this morning when I was speaking to Hlengiwe around the bench, and I said to her, I had instances where counsel would be so disrespectful to me sitting at the bench. And by any means, that's not why I want to be counsel now. But I think, disrespect is the basis of unethical behavior. And, when you sit there and you see someone disrespecting you, you need to continue being professional as well, as much as it can get, bad. I've heard there's a lot of complaints with magistrates, there's a lot of complaints with judicial officers, but we need to remain professional at all times. And this cuts across all the spaces that we work in, whether it's in private practice, in judiciary, whether it's also, in this case, what I'm doing now as counsel. So, or a future counsel, rather. So I think I'm good. If there are any questions, I think we're all still available to answer them as best as we can. Thank you for listening to me. Done.
So I think at this point we will then open the platform for questions. If you do have any questions, please do post them in the chat box. I will be, myself, Shailene will be taking the questions. Shailene, you may proceed with the first question.
Thank you, Kuli, and also Suli, for that very insightful address. I know I, for one, didn't know that we were black to submit ourselves to justice, so that was very informative. And as Kuli said, we are now going to do the questions and answer series. So the first question we have is, someone asked, can we also discuss how competence plays a factor as a key principle in ethics? And I think that's open to any one of our speakers that would like to address this question. So feel free if you would like to address the question, any one of our speakers. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to go back to the chat room and read the question again. Let me see if I can. I'm going to try and answer this if I can, Ms. Njogo and Mr. Ntapu. The issue, am I audible?
Yes, you are, Hlengwe.
Thank you. It's a good question by Lebu. If Lebu doesn't mind me, we are practicing the first name basis. Whether we can discuss how competence also plays a key factor. Look, it is key. Competence can only be placed upon ourselves to make certain that we educate ourselves at all times. If you listen to, as I was listening to Ms. Njogo, she cited case law. It's a typical example of how I know her to be as well, and what our profession demands is that we are constantly well read. We are constantly getting ourselves familiar with recently decided cases, previously decided case law, recent changes in law. I'll give you a typical example. In order for you to understand this, I sit in the family court, and in as much as I mind the administration and not always at court, but whenever I am at court, the experience I have is that most lawyers, because I'll group those that would appear before us, are not well vexed when it comes to domestic violence, for instance, the act itself, not well vexed with what other pieces of legislation accompany the types of court that are in the family court. Especially not well vexed with the procedures that are in a setup that is sui generis, which is unique in nature, that is family court. Now, competence is big, Lebu, and in order for us to make certain that we are competent, we need to constantly read. I think the danger with our profession is that it doesn't require brilliance from the get-go, because there's referral to sources. We have access to referring to sources so that we then know where to find the RAF case that Mr. Njogo was talking about. You know where to find State versus Zuma. You know where to find whatever it is. You go to SABWiL, you type it in the subject, you get what you need. You can even go to Google now. But without us preparing and educating ourselves constantly, learning the law, as law it's not constant. It develops on a daily basis. So I would agree, it does play a big role. If we're talking about competence as well, something else also comes to mind, rather. When I was practicing, I didn't like practicing. I didn't like criminal cases, your rape cases. And I kept on being reminded by a very good friend of mine, Mr. Njogo knows him, Msweli. He's now an additional magistrate as well. that, you know, Hlengiwe, you are so well spoken. I wish you could understand that you would fare in what you are running away from, because you are so well spoken. Now, if I was fortunate enough to, if I am well spoken, I did thank him for the compliment, but if I was fortunate enough to be able to express myself in the spoken language, what about the next person that is unable to do so? Because you might find that somebody is aware and knows what to present in court, but articulation is also an issue. And articulation in this context also goes hand in hand with competence. So constantly read. I'll give you another typical example of how we can improve on that as SABWiL continues to run these legal education sessions. My eldest, who's now 23, went to a different school, moved to Durban, and she had a slight issue that I was not aware of the spoken language. I wasn't aware that there was an issue, but her English teacher said to me, before your daughter becomes an average student, you need to assist her with the spoken language. The expression is a bit of an issue. I don't know whether it's shyness or it's something else. But he then advised me, the teacher, to buy her books, like your novels, check where she is mind-wise. Started off on these novels. I know back in the day we used to read Mills and Boone when I was younger, but I took on that advice and I started buying my daughter books from Bargain Books. Whenever there's a sale, I'll come out with 15 books or whatever the case may be. She's never stopped reading, and her articulation has improved immensely. Maybe we need to also encourage each other to read more. You know, have these extra classes. I love what private companies do when it comes to skills development and training. They will have this particular training on customer relation skills, for instance. Something that we might think is overdone, but it's required. SABWiL has now a beautiful platform. Have sessions where we then find people to assist our jurists who are unable to express themselves eloquently but understand the law, or have sessions that deal with the issues of research as well and procedure in these different courts. So I would say I agree, Lebo, if that's okay, if that satisfies your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hlengiwe. So just to add on that, we have a comment here from, okay, I'll start with Mtogozi. So Mtogozi says, on principle, may I ask yourself, Shaylin? Thank you. So Mtogozi is saying one principle that had to be touched on is accountability. So Mtogozi wishes that we speak about accountability as well, which plays a very important role in our growth as legal practitioners. And he further states that we all make mistakes, and it is very important for us to learn from them in order to teach the young and the potential legal practitioners who are willing to join this noble profession. Noble profession indeed, it is. I don't know if any of our speakers would like to have their take on the accountability part, where I think, as Hlengiwe had previously mentioned, there is a recent case where one of the legal practitioners was struck off the roll, and what I saw, and I'll take ownership of this because it's my opinion. What I saw was the lack of accountability. There was a lot of denial, even with all the facts being smeared all over the media and the documents filed in court. And I think Mtogozi is correct that accountability plays a very, very big role, because when you now apply to be re-enrolled, you have to prove that you have been rehabilitated, and that, you know, proving that you are rehabilitated means that you have taken accountability of your own actions, and thus made it your own duty to actually improve on yourself, transform yourself, and no longer do the things that you were struck off the roll for. There is one case that comes to mind, though I cannot remember the name immediately, where an advocate applied to be re-enrolled, and it was said to read on the documents that even in his responses, it appeared to the court that he was not rehabilitated. So it is very, very important to take stock and account for our actions and take stock of our own thought processes and our own emotions and our own placement in society, perceptions of ourselves, more importantly, when we take the stance and say, I want to be an ethical legal practitioner, but do I really have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And if I don't have, what do I need to do to improve myself and take a step to grow in the profession? It starts there. It begins with introspection. It begins with taking stock of who you are as a person. And I believe that's where the accountability will come from. But let's hear from one of our speakers. What is their take on being accountable as legal professionals, and not only being forced to account, but making it a willingness to account when it comes to our duties?
So thank you for the question or the comments around accountability. And I think when Ukuli was responding to that, I was reminded of when you sit and you listen to a matter on the bench, and I think Hlengiwe will add to this. I'm a bit rusty now with bench issues. So when you sit on the bench, one of the things that you look at, I was sitting in criminal court for the most part of my tenure at the bench. And when you're looking at it, the accused, you're looking at how they are in terms of showing any accountability to what has happened. And I think when you are sentencing, or when you are thinking around, where do you place this person? Are you going to convict them or are you not? You are looking as well. Accountability does take most of the things that you look at. You look at how they are responding. Are they responding in a manner that is, they are saying that, no, I'm not really accountable. There are other factors that made this happen. It's not really me. And that's why, people need to go and get rehabilitated, to bring back this thing of accountability. Accountability for me is also important in corporate. So as I mentioned, I was a compliance officer. When I was slapped with accountability was one of my reports. There were a lot of findings for a specific department. And I remember I was called in and I was told, look, this is not a criminal court, so you can't come here with findings. Go back and change certain your report. So at that point, I had to be accountable with whatever I had put in that document. And so that's what I wanted to share, to say accountability is important, because if I was not accountable to my work, ethically, I would have changed my report to satisfy the higher beings that wanted me to change the way in which my reports was done. So I just wanted to share that from my space, to say, yes, accountability is aligned to ethics, because when you are faced with a situation where you need to change certain things, or you need to change your view, you need to be accountable with why you started, and you need to be accountable with your initial response or your initial output. So I'm not sure if any of the other panelists would want to share around accountability as well. That is my view. Thank you.
Thank you for Ms. Njogo. I still am here on the bench, and yes, definitely accountability does play a big role in Thokoz's Mazibu. Kondlo, when you are saying we all make, there's a portion that you're saying we all make mistakes, and it is very important for us to learn from them in order, etc. That is indeed true. I'm reminded as Unjogo is speaking of our oath of office as magistrates. Do you remember, Ms. Njog? Slightly. And one of the key things about accountability is us as the magistracy being accountable to the Republic of South Africa. That means to the people of the Republic. We are accountable to the Constitution, in essence. I'm going to bring it in a nutshell. It's phrased differently, but accountability is there. And Ms. Njogo, I believe the first speaker also spoke to the issue of not having accountability being only obligatory because it is a demand of my job. It also stems from within. If Umthokozisi says we all make mistakes, accountability when you've made a mistake comes from admitting that you've made a mistake and telling yourself, I'm going to learn how to do it better. Ish gishayi fambula. The minute you say that means you have a conscience to say, hey, I owe somebody an explanation of why I made this decision. Njogo made a perfect example that she needed to account when she was in corporate. As a magistrate, I'm accountable to the Republic, and if and I lose myself and I don't only make mistakes, I go on as if I don't report to anybody. The Magistrates Commission is there. The LPC is there for our young attorneys and advocates. Do you understand? So before it gets there, it should start from within. And again, I will say we need we need this constant reminder. Nothing wrong with a refresher. I remember I wrote a point on the side. It's funny how this is coming up now. I wrote a point which I find in the private sector quite impeccable when they're interviewing people, because we had an engagement with one of the magistrates who's an acting magistrate, a very brilliant gentleman, I won't mention his name, where we said we need help in changing how we are appointed. No psychometric tests are done for magistrates. And psychometric tests in departments like even within DOJ for administrative positions, for instance, are done so that your new boss or new senior gets to understand who you are in temperament, in thinking, etc., etc. The psychology of you gets to be tapped into. Now, if that is not done at the beginning, who then teaches us, Mthokozisi, to say, hey, remember, do not just be afraid of the LPC, or do not just be afraid of the Judges Commission or the Magistrates Commission. First and foremost, who are you supposed to account to first? You need to be afraid of messing things up. It starts here. And then if you do not have, or if you find people that do not have that accountability here first, then it needs a constant reminder. So definitely, it's a principle that needs to be upheld. And will definitely then be exemplary to the younger generation that's coming after us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to our speakers for answering the questions. That was very insightful the way you answered it, and we all agree that accountability is very important in owning up to your mistakes. So we do have another question. It is by Tsiriso Kale. He said that we have spoken at length about how a person should conduct themselves in order to be ethical. However, what kind of advice can we give to those who may have crossed the ethical border to ensure that they start their journey to rehabilitation or redemption? So this is open to either one of the speakers, and then, yeah, they can just address this question.
If I may, I see the other speaker, the gentleman who is a shopping. What's wrong with me? Why am I forgetting his name? I see he's not on. So, Mr. Njogo, would you like to take this one, or can I try? All right. Mr. Kale, I think in a little way I have answered it when I was referring to the issue of where it should then come from. It is unfortunate that once you've crossed the ethical border or the ethical boundary, and once it's touched on the formal bodies that govern us, the period for rehabilitation is different. It's set differently. It's a certain number of years, etc., etc. But let's say you've crossed the ethical border and you are not reported to be then either struck off or removed from the role. I think it also boils down to some of us having this discussion. carrying on in numbers, reminding people of that, reminding people that you still are capable of making the best decisions. You still are capable of going to bed with only a boiled egg instead of a seafood from Ocean Basket because you're tapping into the trust account. It needs to be constantly taught. I don't see any other way to willing lawyers, so to speak. But unfortunately, with the bodies that we have, some repercussions are quite harsh. So if we start now, as SABWiL is doing, if we carry on and sound the gong, I'm almost certain that people who haven't been caught in the true sense of things can also start rehabilitation and redeem themselves. Because you might have a bad reputation. You'll find that there's a lawyer, an advocate, or attorney, or magistrate that has a horrible reputation in terms of misusing monies. I mean, these things started touting down at the cells, at the grills in court, because you're trying to take chances. Of course, Mr. Njogo mentioned the issue of hunger. It's prevalent. But can you withstand that and maintain ethics? And we need to speak about it even more, because this issue of us being, and the sad part is mostly because banning it cuts deeper when it's us as a black people, as a black nation, that have these horrid reputations. For an attorney to be known, or for an advocate to be known, or for magistrate in Kasibe to be known, that if you go to office 125 at Point Branch Court with a brown envelope, you'll be assisted in a domestic violence matter. I think the first time I was approached by someone I know, I was actually shocked to the core. What impression had I ever given this gentleman that I could ever do something like that? He gave me a ring, gave me a call, and said, "Hey, Mkhasibe, hey, yeah, and I'm like, hey, say, I greeted him with his surname. I can be a bit boyish, Njogo knows. I stoop to all levels. I adapt with many different kinds of people. So I'm like, sure, sharp, and then he says, hey, you know, ever since you've been there, you've never done a single thing for me. And I'm thinking, inside, I'm thinking, what on earth do I owe you? You know? And I was like, you owe me a weekend away to my friend. You and I have been friends since 2014. But now that I sit where I sit, it's very tough. You and I can't even hook up and have coffee, because there are kids in the room, coffee. And we laughed about it. And then he says to me, there's a matter that has been anticipated, a domestic violence protection order that has been anticipated, a date has been anticipated, and it's appearing today. I would really like for you to handle that matter for me. And I was like, any particular reason? I don't even know why I decided to ask that, but I thought at the time, let me hear him speak, let him sink even, let him move towards the cliff, so that when it's time to just go and push him, so that he'll now understand who I am. And he says, no, because I'm fethu akwazi ukungenzela lutho, ngiyacela fethu impela fethu lo muntu fethu Nigerian ngazi wethu usha umfazi ya yena umbekile isandla fethu, kodwa ngicela ukuthi fethu ungenzele fethu le anticipation ungikhanselele le order. Ngathi angizwanga. But mfethu ngiyacela mfethu uzokhokha. Siyaziwa ngithi ukuthi magistrates don't earn much. Uzokhokha. And when somebody comes at you with money that you will forever need, it's up to you to decide, ukuthi, I can go without electricity today. I can be an acting senior magistrate who doesn't drive a Lamborghini. I can be an acting senior magistrate who stays in a 2-bedroom flat. I'm not going to force things. So I told him in so many words, which I'm not going to repeat here, where to get off. And our friendship was over, terminated with immediate effect. But had I then joined on the side of people that have that grand reputation of being, you know, it would have to come from me to want to change. So yeah, I hope that answers it. I think it's a matter of constantly telling yourself, and if you can't, you need SABWiL to constantly tell these beautiful women lawyers to say, hey, I don't care how handsome a maintenance respondent is. Do not touch your client. You are not to touch his bank account, touch his body or his other parts. Keep it on the straight and narrow. As a magistrate, I don't care how hot and how single I may be. And they're very hot. Those respondents can be cute, but never you dare date anybody from that pool. Because you end up doing favors for them, aren't you? Your boyfriend, since I'm single at 44, I get to sometimes meet up with these gebengas, and I look at them and I think, I wish you knew that you didn't have anything to gain. We need to teach that to all of us, teach each other that, remind ourselves that you can stay and not have a man if your man is asking you to use your stamp. This is a very powerful stamp. Nobody should touch this except me in the right way. That's what we need to teach. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's my crazy friend, guys. I love it to bits, but she says it like it is. And when she was speaking, I was reminded. I started my law firm without a plan. Well, the plan was I thought I was going to be this big shot environmentalist. This is how I was going to get my Lamborghini. But that didn't happen. So what then I started doing is so I thought this is how I would gain more litigation experience, more drafting skills, etc. Fast forward to when I closed the firm, I was completely shocked at how my matters would not move. And there is a very not so secret rule in the space that for your matters to move, you need to pay. You need to pay for your matters to move. The claimants come to you and they say, why are my matters, mom so and so, now she's renovated her house after that accident, and you're just so slow. What's going on? So I think when that happens and you look at your practice and you're thinking, I'm trying to follow the rules, I'm actually I'm waiting for proper responses, at this stage I don't even have that money to be dishing out, and you're paying for matters to move. You realize that at that point you start wondering, should I join this or should I then still uphold my ethics? So I don't drive a Lamborghini because I chose ethics. I chose to be accountable for whatever oath that I've made. I was thinking, you reminded me, Mkasibe, thank you, of oaths. And I've made an oath as an attorney, I made an oath as a magistrate, I will make an oath as an advocate as well. So I know that one day, whatever my dreams are, whatever financial aspirations I have, I could not have started with a foundation of making it big as an RAF attorney. And I will say now that I will not do RAF matters because, wow, definitely will not do them. And I hope that space does change, because there are people that really need the help, guys. There are people that are injured. There are genuine people that can't continue with their lives because they have been hurt. So, those are the things that we need to speak about. And we see that we see people, their lives are changing as attorneys or as legal practitioners in that space. And you wonder, why is my life not turning? And that's because we've made different decisions. So that is my take, and I just wanted to add that as well. We are constantly tested. We constantly tested. We constantly questioned as legal practitioners. And the one thing that I know, when I wanted to do law, and back in the day, your family would be like, oh, now Funkamba Manga, translated, you also want to be a liar. So yes, we are known for those things, but as I said, that black coat, we need to submit to justice at all times. Thank you. That's just what I wanted to add.
Thank you so much, Tlengiwe and Siwe. Wow, you know, this touches on so many aspects, even of our everyday life. Now, this brings me to another comment, which really speaks to our everyday life and who we are as people and as professionals. So, Nanandi says, she's a founder of the Paralegal Association of South Africa. And she says it's the disrespect and belittling that even seasoned senior paralegals are given today. And since being downgraded by the LPC from their previous stature, it's ethically unacceptable. Now, I've been to interviews to many law firms, and I must say, Nandi, if you have to know, the most wonderful people that have greeted me for those interviews, it made me feel comfortable that even if I don't make it here, there's a better space somewhere else. And here I am, a pupil advocate. And we're paralegals. I would walk in there and it would be the most amazing people in the room that I meet. Before the receptionist, mind you, I've just been lucky to be met by paralegals, and I would ask, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Like, "Oh, no, I'm the paralegal for the firm." But the respect, the comfort they give you to speak to them, even about the firm. What is the firm about? And you know you have read a little bit to prepare yourself, but you always want that inside man to tell you something else that you didn't know. Not to do wrong, but to understand where you're going to place your footing when you come in. And it's always been paralegals that have met me that way. And I think it needs to be really addressed that we first address the human in us before the profession. That needs to be understood. It's the human standing in front of you first before the title that they are. So if we can appreciate that, then we'll learn to respect each other in this profession. We'll learn that, not the tar that we walk on is not gold just because I am robed as an advocate, or you are not robed as an advocate or an attorney. You're just wearing a buttoned up black and white shirt. When we start bringing the Ubuntu and the humanity of in everything that we do, then we'll understand that the person I'm speaking to, they're first human before the title. And yeah, thank you so much, Nandi, for that comment. So we have another. we have another comment, and Latoya says it's not more of a question but more of a comment. The issue of legal ethics in our profession also requires that legal professionals hold each other ethically accountable as colleagues, and I think that speaks volumes. Thank you so much, Latoya, for that comment. So Baratan says there needs to be incorporated in law courses and all tertiary institutions, and even earlier in secondary or primary schools, to become our yardstick that measures us as a people, for young people to know that from that time and to even before tertiary, that there is a certain standard to maintain. Thank you for sharing a valuable experience, and thank you to the organizers, Connie. Thank you so much. Yes, we are indebted to our speakers today. What a heartfelt discussion! What an informative and mind-opening session. Thank you so much to our speakers. I'd like to give back to our MC, Shailene, to proceed with the rest of the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kuliwe. So the program is coming to an end. So I'll just do the ending of the program, I guess. So I'd also just firstly like to thank our speakers for the insights on ethics and for sharing the experience in the legal field with regards to this topic. It was very, very powerful hearing from all of them. Like, they're all such powerhouses and they've got so much experience and just so much knowledge to share. So I'm just really glad that we could be in the space with them and hear about their thoughts and opinions and ideals. It was really, really informative, and I think we all learned a lot. I know for sure I've taken notes, and I'm definitely going to take what everyone has said with me on my journey. And then also I'd like to just also thank everybody for participating and everybody that took the time to spend their Saturday morning in this meeting. I know it might not have been easy for a lot of us young people to get up early and also like devote ourselves to this, but you're not going to regret it, and I think it's going to be something that you will appreciate also one day in the future. I'd also just like to thank President Kuliliwe and also our Deputy Secretary General Sidiso for the organizing. Everything was just, this was just an amazing event, and I think that as Lingiwe mentioned earlier, it's very it's very good to have refresher courses, and it's very important. So it should be done more often, and I do hope that this becomes an annual SABWiL event. So hopefully that will also become one of the events that we do for the year. I'd just like to sincerely thank every guest, every participant, everybody for joining, all the speakers, the organizers, everybody that was here, that took their time on a Saturday morning, that could have been doing anything else. Just thank everybody. Thank everybody for being here and for sharing the space with us. We appreciate your thoughts. Everybody in the comments that we didn't get to, I have noted it down, and we will be we can address that on our page. You can go to our website. We also, in the comments, I see that we have podcasts, so you can go and listen to the podcast if you're wanting to revert back to this event. It will be on our website, and you can also go to our Facebook page and our Instagram page as well. Yes, I think that is it. Thank you everybody for joining once again. It was really appreciated, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday, guys.
Igama lamakhosikazi malibongwe.